The static interference suggests chironomid pupa as they begin to gather trapped gases beneath their pupal skin as they stage just above the bottom. The subdued shine of the static interference works well. Here are the materials you will need to add this pattern to the chironomid section of your fly box. So let's tie the static interference. Into the jaws of the vise, I've placed a Mustad C49S, number 10 in this case, curved scud hook. I've used my Regal to debarb it, one of the great features of these vices. I've slid onto the hook a 7/64 black nickel beads. I get these from Canadian Llama, a great online source for beads. I put the narrow end, right at the hook eye. The wide, larger end is at the rear, pointing towards the rear of the fly. I'm going to take the bead, push that out of the way, and for my tying thread, I'm using white. So I'm just going to attach some thread wraps right behind the eye of the hook, keeping the bulk to a minimum because I've got to slide a bead over my thread wraps here. I'm going to tie on the gills. I'm going to use some UV2 white sparkle yarn. I'm going to take a single strand. What I do is I often just roll the single strand to narrow it down and condense it. Take my tying thread and one wrap right up behind the hook eye. 2 wraps over top to secure. 1 in front, just sort of cock it and raise it so it eases your ability to tie the fly on. The gills aren't blocking the hook eye. And then we're just going to take our tying thread and I'm pulling on it. And I go back at least as far as I anticipate the bead to cover. And at that point I come in on a bit of an angle, trim the gill material, and then cover those butts up with tying thread, building a nice little thread taper up onto the gill material so our bead can slide up easily. It's not going to hit any sort of brick wall, if you will, or thread wall in this case, and cause it to jam up. So we're just going to take 3 to 4 turns of tying thread to whip finish. And this is a step if you're going to tie a lot of these flies. You gill the hooks first, then place the bead on and place the whole assembly into the vise like that. So we're just going to take our nickel bead, push it forward, and reattach our tying thread directly behind the bead, covering up our tie off of the gills and also helping build a slight taper we want going into the thorax area to resemble the natural profile of the chironomid pupa. And we're going to take our tying thread down into the bend of the hook, about a 45-degree angle. That's our thread base done. And then we're going to come right back up, open turns, where we'll tie in our first ribbing material. So our first rib material, this is a double rib fly. So we're using some UTC wire, extra small red in this case. Going to just insert that into the back of the bead and then secure this down the hook shank into the bend, right back to where we finished our basic body wrap. And then we're just going to secure the ribbing into our materials clip. And then for the second rib, we're going to use some black stretch floss. Now I want to just tie this in with a minimum of wraps. So I've just got this tied in place because we're using the white thread because the body material in this case, anti-static bag, which I'll introduce you to in a second, is translucent, and the thread color can have and does have a bearing on the overall finished color of the fly. So I don't want to, that's why I haven't used black thread. The white is a neutral thread. So we're just going to make sure that's tied in. I'm going to come in and nip off as much of that little tag as I can and use my tying thread to squash it out nice and flat and even up the hook shank as best we can. And then I'm just going to let my thread hang just probably either just forward or in this case just a little bit behind the hook point. Of course we all know thread has kind of suicidal tendencies and anything sharp it's likely to leap into and cut itself. Now for the body material, I'm going to use, as the name of the fly would suggest, the static interference, anti-static bag. Now this is the bags, they're about 8.5 by 11 in this one I've got. They're translucent gray, kind of a gunmetal color that imitates a chironomid pupa that isn't quite fully inflated yet, so it's not that chromy silver color. These are the bags used to protect circuit boards from static discharge. And we cut them into very slender strips, such as this, that we use for the body material. Okay? You can also use, if you can't find this, because it's not always readily available, an excellent alternative is Flashaboo in color 6916. It's either called gunmetal gray or blue steel, and this is an excellent anti-static bag substitute. But I'll show you the anti-static bag today. So I'm just going to take the slip. I used a straight edge to cut this. It's not a stretchy material. So I'm just going to come in, and I've trimmed it off on an angle. And we're going to ease the tie-in, we're going to hold that along the side of the shank. And I'm going to lay this on top and secure it down. And then wind my tying thread forwards, right up to the rear of the bead. And I'm building a little bit of a thread taper. I can go back and forth a little bit, but it's better to err on the side of skinny. Now this is not a stretchy material, so if you pull on it really hard, it will break. So you've just got to learn to get a touch for it. I'm going to make my first wrap straight, right over, and then I'm going to slowly wind and overlap the anti-static bag material. This helps create little segments, if you will. Wind that forward. And you want to cut your anti-static bag as thin as you can. Ideally, the width of the Flashaboo is a good measure. This might be a little thick, but for this number 10, it's actually working out okay. And we just come up to the rear of the bead, tie this off, and trim. And you can get anti-static bag in different shades. This is kind of a gunmetal gray color. And with the underbody color, it has a real effect on the overall finished color. This is going to be quite bright. If you tied it with black, it'd be a very dark gray. You can get them in pink as well, and a pink anti-static bag is a good body material as well, believe it or not. It gives the fly a little plum color, if you will, or a little pink color, and the trout like that. We can also at this point trim our gills. So we're just going to come in, pull the gills back over the bead, scissor blades at the rear of the bead, and make one snip, and hopefully get rid of all the little fibers. And now our gills are proportioned to this number 10 hook, about the width of the bead. We're now going to take our first ribbing material, which is the black stretch floss in this case, and we're just going to wind it forward, and I'm pulling on this stretch floss really tight. I want to reduce its bulk, so we're going to come up, winding this all the way, and you can see there's a reasonable amount of space. Up, tie off once, twice, a couple more in front, pull on it to reduce bulk again for trimming. And what I often do with stretchy materials like this is I'm going to place a 2-3 turn whip finish at the rear of the bead, and that locks that off. So if I bang the bobbin or bounce the thread a little bit, it's not going to loosen and unravel my stretch floss and cause me headaches. Now we're going to take our second rib, which is our red wire in this case, and we're just going to come up and get it to fit in this case, right in front of the black stretch floss. And it usually just follows along. Once it's in place after the first couple of ribs, it just tucks in nicely right along, providing a bit of contrast, helps suggest that hemoglobin again. And tie that off. A couple of wraps over the top of the red wire. A couple in front. And then we're going to pull and twist to break or helicopter the wire away. And now we're just going to build up a neat little thread thorax to finish the fly. So I've spun my thread in this case and started to build it up. But as I'm nearing completion, rather than change the thread color to black, which will be the color that would complete this fly, I'm just going to take a permanent marker and I'm just going to color an inch or two of tying thread. Do my spin trick again to take out the twist so I get nice flat wraps. And I want to build up a nice neat thread thorax, a gentle slope up from the body of the fly to the rear of the bead. And if I run out of colored thread like I have here to do the whip finish, I just come in with my marker and I simply change the color. So I'm happy with the profile on my thorax. I'm just going to come up, do my whip finish, disengage the thread, trim, and the tying portion of my fly is complete. And now we just have to add a little body coating to this. And you can use nail polish, one of the many UV resins out there today. I like to also use brushable super glue. I'm just going to coat that, and that adds additional shine and durability. And there you have the finished static interference. And don't be bound, I'm just going to take that thread remnant and throw that in there. Don't be bound by this black and red coloration. You can tie them in a myriad of colors, both in thread and ribbing combinations. Olive and gold, maroon and red, black and red in this case. The combinations are literally endless. And if you can't find the anti-static bag, remember 6916 is the Flash-A-Boo. This is a great fly to have in your box when trout are focused on staging chironomids before they're fully inflated. Make sure you have a few on hand so when you're ready for that situation. For more information on fly fishing, and stillwater fly fishing in particular, please visit my website at flycraftangling.com. Here you'll find lots of information, including fly fishing tips, fly patterns, articles, dates on my seminars and schools, along with links to my blog and mine and Brian Chan's online stillwater fly fishing shop. You can also visit our store directly at stillwaterflyfishingstore.com. Please join the conversation on my Facebook page or follow me on Twitter. Thanks for watching, and please take the time to watch my other tying videos as well.